The Force had been restless for days. Across the galaxy, from the smoking seas of Mustafar to the sterile spires of Coruscant, something invisible trembled, like a nerve touched by cold steel. Astromech droids malfunctioned without cause. Hyperspace lanes flickered with micro-instabilities. In the deep vacuum beyond the mid-rim, a convoy of Imperial freighters reported gravitational distortions that vanished as quickly as they appeared. And on Mustafar, above rivers of molten fire and the obsidian silhouette of Darth Vader's fortress, reality split open. It began as a fracture, thin as a blade's edge, glowing sickly green against the blackened sky. The air screamed. Lava surged higher as if recoiling. Imperial mining installations along the planet's northern hemisphere registered seismic chaos before their sensors overloaded entirely. Then the sky tore apart. A spiral of emerald energy collapsed inward, and from its heart a figure fell like a meteor, cloak of black snapping in infernal winds, crown of antlered obsidian gleaming like a challenge to the stars. She did not scream. She landed. The ground cratered beneath her boots, obsidian cracking like glass across a mile-wide radius. A shockwave rippled outward, extinguishing flame towers and toppling sensor arrays. The Force itself recoiled. In his meditation chamber within the spires of Imperial Palace on Coruscant, Emperor Palpatine's yellow eyes snapped open. On Mustafar, deep within his fortress, Darth Vader felt something he had not felt in years: uncertainty. Hela, goddess of death, rose slowly from the smoking crater. The air here was wrong, thinner, coarser, tainted by rage that did not belong to her. She inhaled deeply. The magic of Asgard, of Hell, answered weakly, muted, distant, like a heartbeat underwater. 85%. She felt it immediately, a draining resistance, as if the very fabric of this realm resisted her dominion. The dead here were different. Their spirits did not linger in familiar currents. There was another current, an invisible tide threading through all things. The Force. She tilted her head, sensing it brush against her like a curious predator. A new realm, a wounded realm, and ripe. If you want to see more characters enter the Star Wars galaxy, hit that subscribe button and drop a character name in comments. May the Force be with you. Her voice carried across the burning plains like a decree. Mustafar, Imperial Mining Sector, Auric 19. Commander Viral did not believe in myths. He believed in scanners, in troop rotations, in orbital bombardment clearance codes. He believed in the Empire. He did not believe in women stepping out of green lightning storms. He barked, "Contact the fortress, full alert, all platoons advance, heavy repeaters ready." Stormtroopers moved with disciplined precision, white armor stark against black volcanic glass, AT-ST walkers repositioned along the ridge. The figure in the crater moved. She stepped forward, tall, armored in black and emerald, antlered headdress framing a face carved from contempt. "Identify yourself," Viral shouted through external speakers. Hela looked at the approaching soldiers. Metal, uniform, fear beneath discipline. She flexed her fingers. Blades answered. They erupted from her hands in a fan of obsidian daggers, curved, jagged, shimmering with necrotic green light. They felt thinner here, less eager, but real. Stormtroopers opened fire. Red blaster bolts streaked through sulphurous air. Hela moved like a whisper of night. Blades flashed, armor split. Troopers fell before they understood they were dying. Blaster fire scorched her shoulder. She staggered half a step. Interesting. Energy-based weapons, not primitive steel. She adjusted instantly, conjuring a wave of spears that intercepted incoming bolts mid-air. Each impact hissed with unstable resonance, the Force resisting her constructs, but not destroying them.
An AT-ST fired. The explosion swallowed her in flame. When the smoke cleared, she stood unharmed, armor blackened but intact. Her smile widened. Pathetic. She raised both arms. Green energy spiraled outward, seeping into fallen stormtroopers. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then fingers twitched. Helmets snapped upright. Dead soldiers rose. The Force reacted violently. A ripple surged through the volcanic plains, unseen but undeniable. In Vader's meditation chamber, obsidian walls trembled. The dead were not meant to move like that. The Emperor felt it too. Not Sith alchemy, not Night Sister craft. Something older, something alien. On Mustafar, 20 stormtroopers turned toward their former commander, eyes glowing sickly green behind cracked visors. Commander Viral stumbled backward. What is this? Hela stepped past him casually. My army. The undead opened fire on the living. Chaos erupted. Within minutes, the mining sector burned. Imperial shuttles attempted emergency liftoff. Hela hurled a volley of necrotic lances skyward, impaling engines and sending them crashing into lava seas. She walked through carnage like a queen surveying her inheritance. But beneath her composure, she felt it again. Resistance. The dead answered, but sluggishly, not bound as completely as in her native realm. Something tugged at their spirits, trying to reclaim them. The Force did not like being defied. She would need an anchor, a nexus, something steeped in death strong enough to stabilize her dominion. Her gaze lifted toward the distant silhouette of Vader's fortress. Yes, that would do. Coruscant, Imperial Palace. Palpatine's fingers steepled as holographic projections flickered before him, grainy footage from Mustafar's surviving satellites. He watched Hela decapitate an AT-ST with a thrown blade of black energy. He smiled slowly. Fascinating. The chamber doors parted with mechanical precision. Darth Vader entered, cape sweeping across polished obsidian floors. You felt it, Palpatine said softly. Yes, my master. What do you sense? Vader paused. Death. Palpatine's eyes gleamed. Not through the Force. Vader's helmet inclined slightly. No. That troubled him. Everything lived within the Force, everything. Yet this being, she felt adjacent to it, tangential, as if she stood outside the river while still disturbing its currents. A rival? Vader asked. Perhaps, Palpatine murmured, or an opportunity. He rose slowly from his throne. Lord Vader, travel to Mustafar, investigate, do not destroy her unless you must. And if she resists? A thin smile. Then test her. Lightning flickered faintly across Palpatine's fingertips before vanishing.
Mustafar, the march to the fortress. Hela advanced toward Vader's citadel, undead legion in tow. The air grew heavier. She could feel it now, concentrated darkness ahead, a place steeped in suffering, pain layered upon pain. She inhaled deeply. Yes, this would strengthen her. But as she approached the fortress gates, the sky roared again, not with green lightning, but with the scream of descending TIE fighters, Imperial reinforcements. She sighed. Very well. Blaster fire rained from above. Her undead shielded her, absorbing bolts that should have dropped them instantly, but each impact destabilized their animation further. She would not sustain them long under sustained energy assault. Adapt. She hurled spears upward, impaling one TIE mid-flight. It spiraled into a lava river. The others broke formation. And then, the ground shook. A Lambda-class shuttle descended slowly, landing between her and the fortress entrance. The ramp lowered. Heavy boots stepped onto volcanic stone. Black armor, crimson blade igniting with a snap hiss that cut through sulfur winds. Darth Vader stood motionless, cape billowing. The force around him coiled like a storm. Hela studied him. Another warlord? Vader's mechanical breathing filled the silence. You are an anomaly. She smiled. I am death. He raised his saber slightly. You are trespassing. Her antlered crown extended subtly, shadow deepening across her face. Then come, she said softly. Show me how this realm kills. The lava bubbled violently nearby. Ash drifted like snow. TIE fighters circled above. The undead shifted restlessly. And the Dark Lord of the Sith stepped forward. The galaxy held its breath.
Vader did not rush. He advanced with measured inevitability, boots crunching against volcanic glass, the red blade of his lightsaber casting violent reflections across Hela's emerald-etched armor. The heat of Mustafar rolled between them in blistering waves, distorting the air like a living veil. Hela felt it immediately. The pressure. Not magic, not sorcery. The force pressed against her like gravity with intention. Interesting. Her undead legion twitched behind her, their movements slowing as Vader extended one black-gloved hand. Without visible effort, he clenched his fist. Half the resurrected stormtroopers lifted off the ground, invisible fingers crushing armor and bone. Their weapons fell from slack hands, helmets crumpled inward with metallic shrieks. Hela's eyes narrowed. The force was not merely ambient energy, it was will made manifest. With a subtle motion, she dissolved the remaining undead into streaks of green vapor before Vader could seize them too. You command the air itself, she observed coolly. Vader's breathing remained steady. The Force binds all things. Not all. She hurled a fan of obsidian blades. They screamed toward him in a tight arc, each one capable of cleaving through starship hull plating. Vader's saber spun in a precise defensive wheel. Sparks exploded as crimson energy met necrotic steel. Two blades shattered. One deflected into the lava sea. Another grazed his shoulder pauldron, carving a smoking gash into durasteel. He did not flinch. The final blade he stopped mid-air, suspended by invisible power. It trembled violently between them before crumpling inward like paper. Hela tilted her head. Impressive. She lunged. Their clash detonated across the volcanic plain. Her conjured swords collided against his lightsaber in a flurry of black and red. Each strike sent shockwaves rippling through the scorched ground. Lava splashed skyward in violent arcs. Ash spiraled upward like a cyclone around them. Vader fought economically. No wasted motion, no theatrical flourish. Each strike aimed to disable. Each parry redirected her momentum with brutal efficiency. But Hela was no novice warrior. She flowed around his attacks, blades forming and dissolving in her hands like extensions of thought. She struck from impossible angles, conjuring spears beneath his footing, hurling daggers at exposed joints in his armor. He leapt, boosted by the force, clearing a surge of black spikes that erupted from the earth where he had stood. He landed behind her and unleashed a concussive force push. The blast struck her squarely. She skidded across obsidian rock, armor carving a glowing trench before she dug her heels in and halted. The air shimmered around her, necrotic energy flickering erratically. 85%. The force disrupted her constructs on impact, fraying them like cloth in a storm. But she was adapting.
You wield death like a tool, Vader said, filtered and mechanical. Yet you are not of the Force. I do not need your river, she replied, rising slowly. I am the abyss. She thrust her hand outward. The ground beneath Vader liquefied, not lava, but hardened obsidian reshaped into grasping talons. Clawed structures snapped around his legs, attempting to bind him. Vader answered instantly. A pulse of raw telekinetic force shattered the bindings outward in a circular explosion, flinging razor shards in all directions. Several embedded in Hela's side. She looked down at them almost curiously. Then they dissolved into green mist. The duel had already altered the battlefield beyond recognition. Lava diverted from its channels. Mining outposts smoldered in ruins. TIE fighters kept their distance now, circling like scavengers unwilling to descend into the storm. Inside the fortress, sensors recorded power fluctuations never before measured. On Coruscant, Emperor Palpatine smiled. Vader advanced again. This time, he attacked first. His blade carved downward with crushing weight, each strike fueled by disciplined rage. The dark side surged through him, amplifying strength beyond human limitation. Hela met him blow for blow. But she felt it now. His connection to this realm was absolute. The environment obeyed him instinctively. The Force fed him endurance. She could overpower him physically. She could outmaneuver him strategically. But the longer this continued, the more the Force interfered. She needed leverage. As Vader drove her backward towards a ridge overlooking a churning lava flow, Hela abruptly stopped retreating. She smiled. Vader sensed the shift too late.
Behind him, the corpses of fallen troopers and TIE pilots, bodies scattered across the battlefield, erupted in synchronized motion. Not as before, stronger. She had adjusted her method. Instead of forcing full reanimation, she tethered only fragments: motor control, aggression, instinct. The Force resisted less when the soul was not fully bound. Clever. The undead surged toward Vader in a tidal wave of fractured armor and smoking wounds. He spun, lightsaber carving through them in lethal arcs. Limbs fell, helmets split, but numbers pressed in from every angle. Hela raised both hands. Necrotic spears formed above like a crown of black lightning. She hurled them all at once. Vader extended both arms outward. The world froze. Every spear halted mid-flight, vibrating violently against invisible resistance. The lava around them surged unnaturally high as the Force bent reality itself. Then, with a roar that shook the fortress walls, Vader reversed their momentum. The spears rocketed back toward her. Hela crossed her arms defensively. They struck. Green energy exploded outward in a blinding detonation. The shockwave tore across the plain, flattening remaining mining structures and sending TIE fighters scrambling. When the smoke cleared, both figures still stood. But Hela's breathing was heavier now. Not exhaustion, calibration. Vader stepped through falling ash. "You are powerful," he admitted. She laughed softly. "And you are stubborn." Their eyes met, hers cold emerald, his hidden behind lenses burning red. For the first time in years, Vader felt something beyond rage and obedience. Challenge. Not a Jedi pleading for mercy, not a rebel desperate for hope. An equal, if not yet in power, then in presence. But the Emperor's will lingered at the edge of his thoughts. Test her. Do not destroy her, unless you must. Hela sensed it too, an unseen observer. "You are not the master here," she said quietly. Vader's grip tightened. "I serve the Empire." "No," she corrected. "You serve a leash." The words struck harder than any blade.
The Force trembled. Mustafar's winds intensified, swirling violently between them. Hela lowered her weapons. "I did not come to kneel." "Then you will die," Vader answered. "Will I?" She extended her senses outward, past Vader, past the battlefield, toward the fortress itself. It pulsed.
Layers of agony embedded in stone. Endless suffering, countless deaths stirring its construction. Pain crystallized into architecture. A nexus, a wound in this realm, and wounds were doorways. She smiled slowly. The air around her began to darken, not green, but something deeper. The lava dimmed as if shadows swallowed its glow. Vader sensed the shift instantly. "Stop!" She did not. Instead of attacking him directly, she redirected her energy into the fortress. The obsidian spires groaned, windows shattered outward. Within the citadel, droids malfunctioned as necrotic currents bled into circuitry, energy conduits flickered. Hela anchored herself. The resistance she had felt since arriving lessened. 87%, 88%. The Force howled in opposition, but the fortress amplified her. Vader ignited his saber fully and leapt toward her, blade raised for a decisive strike. She turned at the last second. Their weapons collided again, but this time her strength had increased. She drove him backward, step by step. Obsidian cracked beneath his boots. "You see," she whispered, "your realm bleeds too." Vader unleashed a burst of force lightning, not his own, but redirected residual energy from the environment, crackling through the air in unstable arcs. It struck her chest. Pain exploded through her nerves, raw, invasive, alien. She screamed, not in fear, but fury. Green and red energy clashed violently around them, forming a vortex that spiraled upward into Mustafar's sky. Orbiting star destroyers registered the anomaly instantly. Admiral Kendros aboard the Devastator opened a secure channel. "My lord, should we commence orbital bombardment?" Vader's voice cut through static. "Stand down." This was no longer a simple elimination. This was a proving ground. Below, Hela staggered but did not fall. Lightning scorched her armor, but instead of dissipating, she absorbed part of it, twisting it into jagged spears that crackled with hybrid energy. She hurled one. It pierced Vader's shoulder plating and detonated in a burst of green flame. He dropped to one knee briefly, servo motors whining in protest. For a heartbeat, the battlefield fell silent. Hela stepped closer. "You bleed," she said softly. Vader rose again. "Pain is irrelevant." He lifted his hand slowly. The lava behind Hela surged into a towering wave. Not natural, the Force commanded it like a beast. It crashed down toward her with apocalyptic force. She crossed her arms and plunged her power into the ground. Obsidian rose upward in a protective dome just as molten fire engulfed it. The impact shook Mustafar's crust. When the lava receded, the dome cracked and shattered. Hela emerged, armor scorched, crown fractured slightly at one antler. She looked exhilarated. "You are not like the others," she admitted. "And you are trespassing still." Before either could resume, a new presence rippled across the battlefield. Colder, sharper, more ancient in its malice. A shuttle descended through smoke, sleek, black, unmistakable. The Emperor had decided to witness the anomaly personally. Hela felt it instantly. This one was different. Not disciplined rage, not wounded fury, but patient corruption. The shuttle doors opened. Palpatine stepped onto Mustafar's burning surface, cloak billowing despite the lack of wind. He surveyed the devastation with thin amusement. My, what an extraordinary disturbance. Hela straightened fully. Vader stepped aside, but did not kneel. The true confrontation had not yet begun, and the galaxy's balance had just tilted further into shadow. The air itself seemed to recoil as Emperor Palpatine stepped onto Mustafar's scarred surface. Ash drifted in slow spirals around him, never quite touching his robes, as if even the planet's fury hesitated. Behind him, the sleek shuttle's ramp remained open, a dark mouth waiting to swallow its master should the need arise. Imperial royal guards stood at attention inside, crimson cloaks unmoving despite the volcanic winds. Palpatine surveyed the devastation with visible delight. Lava redirected, mining installations annihilated, Vader's fortress cracked in bleeding black smoke. And at the center of it all, her. A most dramatic entrance, the Emperor murmured, yellow eyes studying Hela as though she were a rare artifact unearthed from forgotten Sith catacombs. You have caused my empire considerable inconvenience. Hela stood tall, despite scorch marks across her armor. One antler of her crown remained fractured from the lava assault, yet the break only made her appear more dangerous. Your empire, she echoed, voice smooth and edged with disdain. How quaint. Vader shifted slightly at Palpatine's side, red blades still ignited. His damaged shoulder plating smoked faintly, but he remained unbowed. The Force churned violently between the three of them, two masters of the dark side, in something entirely alien. Palpatine tilted his head. You are not of this galaxy, he observed, yet you manipulate death as though it were clay in your hands. I do not manipulate it, I rule it. A flicker of interest passed across the Emperor's expression. Do you? He extended one hand casually. The Force surged. Invisible pressure slammed into Hela from all sides, far more refined and precise than Vader's brute telekinetic force. This was a scalpel, not a hammer. It sought weaknesses. It probed the seams where her magic clashed against the natural current of this realm. Hela staggered half a step, not from raw power, but from intrusion. He was trying to understand her. The Force flowed around her like water around stone, yet it pressed harder now, attempting to carve channels through unfamiliar terrain. 90%, she thought grimly. The fortress nexus had strengthened her, but Palpatine's mastery of this realm exceeded Vader's in subtlety. The Emperor smiled faintly. Fascinating. You exist adjacent to the Force, outside its design, and yet you bend reality. He lowered his hand. The pressure ceased instantly. Vader watched silently, measuring. He could feel his master testing her boundaries, mapping her limits like a tactician before siege. Palpatine took a slow step forward. Tell me, he continued smoothly, what is it you seek in my galaxy? Hela glanced briefly toward Vader's fortress. I seek dominion. Ah, Palpatine said softly, then we are alike. Do not presume kinship, she replied sharply. The Emperor chuckled, a dry, brittle sound. Every being who craves dominion believes themselves unique. The lava sea behind them erupted in rhythmic bursts, casting violent orange light across their faces. Overhead, star destroyers repositioned cautiously in orbit, awaiting command. TIE fighters circled at extreme distance, unwilling to approach further. The entire Empire watched through sensor arrays. Palpatine gestured to the devastation. You have demonstrated considerable power, but this galaxy is not easily conquered. He motioned subtly toward Vader. My apprentice alone has crushed entire rebel cells and hunted the last remnants of the Jedi Order. Vader's presence loomed like a living storm beside him. Hela regarded them both. You mistake me, she said. I did not come to conquer your empire. Palpatine's eyes narrowed slightly.
I came to claim your dead." The Force rippled violently at those words. A subtle tension tightened across Vader's posture. Palpatine's smile thinned. "The dead," he repeated. "Yes," Hela said calmly. "Your wars have filled this realm with corpses, soldiers, civilians, Jedi, Sith, all squandered in pursuit of petty thrones." Her gaze locked onto Palpatine. "You waste them." For a heartbeat, something dangerous flickered in the Emperor's expression. Not anger, but offense. "You presume much." Hela extended her hand toward the horizon. Far beyond the mining sector, in the shadow of Vader's fortress, shallow graves and ash-covered remains began to stir. Not rise fully, not yet, but stir. Palpatine felt it instantly, a disturbance spreading outward like ink through water. She was not merely reanimating nearby bodies, she was reaching across the planet, drawing threads. "You would build an army," Palpatine said quietly. "No," she corrected, "I would build a kingdom." Vader stepped forward, blade humming. "This world is mine." Hela glanced at him. "Is it, or do you merely guard it for him?" The Force trembled at the implication. Palpatine raised one hand slightly, not to strike, but to halt escalation. "Enough." The word carried unnatural weight. Even Hela felt its authority. "Violence," the Emperor continued, "is inefficient when opportunity stands before us." He turned fully toward her now. "You desire dominion over death. I desire absolute order over life. These goals need not conflict." Hela studied him carefully. Temptation, not subservience, collaboration. She could feel the sincerity beneath his manipulation. He saw value in her, but she also sensed something else. Calculation. He did not merely want alliance. He wanted access. Access to her power, her methods, her immunity to the Force's constraints. "What do you propose?" she asked coolly. Palpatine's smile widened slightly. "Join me. Serve the Empire. In return, I will grant you dominion over conquered systems, worlds ravaged by war, where death reigns supreme."
He gestured skyward. "The outer rim is rich with such planets." Vader remained silent, but the tension in his stance deepened. Hela felt it. This was more than diplomacy, it was positioning. If she accepted, she would not replace Vader, but she would stand near him, close enough to threaten, close enough to destabilize the rule of two. "You offer me scraps," she said softly. Palpatine's expression did not change. "I offer you a foothold in this galaxy." "I do not take footholds. I take thrones." The lava surged again, responding to rising tension. Palpatine's voice dropped lower, silk over steel. "Power in this galaxy flows through the Force. You resist it, but you do not command it." A subtle pulse of dark energy emanated from him. "You will always be an anomaly here." Hela stepped closer, unafraid. "I do not need your river," she said quietly. "I am a sea." For the first time, Palpatine's smile faded completely. The Force gathered around him like a storm cloud. Lightning crackled faintly between his fingertips. "Careful," he warned. Hela's own energy flared, emerald shadows stretching across fractured obsidian. Behind them, Vader watched everything. He felt it now, clearly. This was no simple invasion. This was an inflection point. If Hela aligned with the Emperor, the balance would shift permanently.
If she defied him and survived, the galaxy would fracture. Palpatine released the lightning, not as a killing strike, as a test. Arcs of pure dark side energy tore across the space between them, twisting the air into violent distortion. Hela crossed her arms. The lightning struck her chest. Pain, unlike anything she had felt before, tore through her. Not heat, not physical force. Violation. The Force was attempting to rewrite her connection to this realm, forcing her into its current. She screamed, not in weakness, but in rage. Green energy exploded outward in retaliation. The two powers collided mid-air, forming a swirling vortex of black and emerald that scorched the sky itself. Mustafar's surface cracked further. Vader shielded himself with a telekinetic barrier as shockwaves rippled outward. The clash did not end quickly. Palpatine increased output steadily, methodically, analyzing her resistance. Hela adjusted in real time, altering frequency, reinforcing internal anchors through the fortress nexus. 92%. She felt it. Each second anchored her more firmly. The Force howled in protest. Then, she did something unexpected. Instead of resisting the lightning fully, she absorbed a fragment of it, twisting it through her own necrotic matrix. The emerald glow darkened, shifted, hybridized. Palpatine's eyes widened slightly. She hurled the corrupted energy back at him. The blast struck her outstretched hand, forcing him to step back half a pace. Only half, but enough. Silence fell. Ash rained down. The lava's glow dimmed temporarily under the oppressive energy saturating the battlefield.
Hela stood breathing steadily now, stronger than when the confrontation began. Palpatine regarded her with new calculation. "You learn quickly," he said softly. "I adapt," she replied. Vader stepped forward slightly. "My master." Palpatine raised a hand without looking at him. "Not yet." The Emperor studied Hela carefully. "You are powerful," he admitted at last, "but this galaxy is not won through brute force alone." He gestured subtly toward orbit. "You have already drawn the attention of my fleets, my governors, my hunters." As if summoned by his words, a distant rumble echoed across the horizon. Additional Imperial shuttles descending. Not stormtroopers, something more specialized. The Inquisitorius. Hela felt new presences entering the atmosphere. Force-sensitive, disciplined, predatory. Palpatine's voice dropped to a near whisper. "Let us see how you fare against more than one blade." Vader's crimson saber hummed louder. The game had shifted, and the galaxy was about to witness whether the goddess of death could withstand the combined weight of Sith design.
The sky above Mustafar darkened, not with night, but with descending silhouettes. 3 Imperial shuttles cut through sulfuric clouds, their hulls gleaming black against the molten horizon. They did not land near the Emperor. They formed a widening perimeter around Hela instead. Containment. The first ramp lowered. The Grand Inquisitor stepped forward, double-bladed spinning saber igniting with a violent crimson hiss. His pale face reflected the lava's glow, expression carved in disciplined malice. From the second shuttle emerged the 5th brother, heavy and deliberate, blade already active. From the third, the 7th sister, poised and analytical, her gaze locked onto Hela with clinical curiosity. Behind them, purge troopers disembarked in synchronized formation, electrostaffs crackling. Palpatine folded his hands into his sleeves. "Demonstrate," he murmured to no one in particular. Vader did not move. His blade remained lit, but he stood aside, observing. Hela slowly rotated her shoulders as if preparing for a dance. "So many servants," she said softly. "Does your empire breed them in vats?" The Grand Inquisitor advanced first. "You are an aberration. You will submit or be eliminated." Hela laughed. "I do not submit." He launched forward, saber spinning into a circular buzzsaw of crimson light. The fifth brother charged simultaneously from her flank. The seventh sister held back, calculating angles, her mechanical probe droids lifting into the air. Coordinated assault. Disciplined. The force tightened around Hela like a net. The Grand Inquisitor struck first, overhead slash aimed to cleave her crown in half. Hela conjured twin blades mid-motion, crossing them to catch the spinning saber. Sparks exploded outward in a violent arc. The hum of his weapon vibrated unnaturally against her constructs. She felt it again, the force attempting to destabilize her magic through contact. 89%. The fifth brother slammed into her from the side with brute strength. She pivoted, absorbing the impact, but the force of it drove her several meters across fractured obsidian. The seventh sister's probe droids fired precision bursts of blaster fire, targeting joints in her armor. One bolt struck her thigh. She did not cry out. Instead, she dissolved the damaged section into green mist and reformed it instantly. The Inquisitors paused for a fraction of a second. Regeneration. Adaptation. Interesting. The Grand Inquisitor pressed harder, spinning saber creating a wall of red energy that forced her into defensive motion. The fifth brother swung heavy, crushing blows designed to overwhelm. Hela's blades clashed repeatedly, each contact showering sparks across the volcanic plain. Then she changed rhythm. Instead of blocking, she let one strike pass. The Grand Inquisitor's saber sliced through her shoulder, but the flesh beneath dissolved before the blade completed its arc. She reformed behind him instantly, conjured spear materializing mid-spin. She thrust. The spear pierced through his torso. For one heartbeat, time froze. Then, the force exploded outward. Not from her, from him. The Grand Inquisitor roared, severing the spear with a desperate backward spin. He staggered, but did not fall. Hela narrowed her eyes. The wound had been fatal. She felt it, but the force sustained him, holding life within his body beyond normal limits. The fifth brother slammed into her again, forcing separation. The seventh sister launched her probe droids forward, mechanical tendrils attempting to latch on to Hela's arms. She allowed one to attach. Green energy surged through it. The droid disintegrated instantly, its systems overloaded by necrotic corruption. The other droids retreated. Palpatine observed with keen interest. "She learns quickly," he murmured. Vader said nothing, but he saw it too. She was no longer simply reacting. She was studying them, understanding the interplay between her power and the Force. Hela raised both hands suddenly. The battlefield responded. This time, she did not reach for fully intact corpses. She reached for fragments, ash, bone shards, scattered armor pieces infused with lingering death. The volcanic ground trembled as skeletal forms rose, not complete bodies, but jagged constructs of bone and metal fused together. Dozens. They charged. The Inquisitors cut through them with brutal efficiency, but every destroyed construct bought her seconds to escalate. Hela leapt high above the battlefield, landing atop a fractured basalt spire. Her crown extended fully now, antlers stretching into wicked arcs. She closed her eyes briefly. Instead of resisting the Force, she aligned herself with its turbulence. Mustafar was saturated with rage, grief, betrayal, Anakin Skywalker's agony, Jedi deaths, slaughtered workers, pain layered upon pain.
She anchored deeper. 94%. When she opened her eyes again, they glowed brighter. The Grand Inquisitor lunged once more. This time, Hela did not block. She caught his spinning saber bare-handed. The blade burned against her palm, yet did not sever it. Necronic energy wrapped around the plasma stream, stabilizing its shape. The spinning mechanism sputtered. She crushed it inward. The weapon exploded in a shower of sparks. Before he could react, she drove a blade through his chest again, deeper this time. No theatrics, no speech. He collapsed. This time, the Force did not preserve him. The fifth brother roared in fury and charged recklessly. She sidestepped and severed his leg at the knee. He fell. A swift downward thrust ended him.
The seventh sister retreated instinctively, but Vader stepped forward at last. Enough. His voice reverberated across the plain like a commandment. The remaining purge troopers froze, awaiting instruction. Palpatine's gaze sharpened slightly, but he did not intervene. Vader ignited his saber brighter and advanced toward Hela. "You grow stronger," he said. "Yes," she replied calmly. "You anchor yourself to this world. I claim what is mine." The seventh sister, still alive, circled cautiously. Vader did not look at her. "Leave." She hesitated, then obeyed, retreating toward her shuttle with the remaining troopers. Now it was only them again, and the Emperor watching. Hela stepped down from the basalt spire. "You send others to weaken me," she said softly to Palpatine, "but you miscalculated." Palpatine's smile returned faintly. "Did I?" He extended one hand subtly toward the fallen Inquisitors. The Force responded. Their bodies lifted into the air. Hela felt it instantly. Not resurrection, extraction. Palpatine was not trying to reanimate them. He was siphoning something. Dark side energy harvested from their deaths, concentrated and redirected. It flowed into him like smoke drawn into a vacuum. Hela's eyes narrowed. "You feed on your own." Palpatine lowered the corpses gently. "Death is a resource," he said calmly, "one you do not exclusively command." The battlefield's energy shifted again. He had grown stronger, not dramatically, but measurably. Hela understood then. This galaxy's dark side functioned differently. It did not require physical reanimation. It metabolized suffering itself, a different path to dominion. Vader sensed the escalation too. The duel was no longer merely physical, it was philosophical. Control of death, control of suffering, two systems colliding. Palpatine clasped his hands behind his back. "Join me," he said one final time, "and together we will refine your power beyond its current limitations." Hela considered it. For a heartbeat, truly considered it. With his knowledge of this realm's metaphysics and her dominion over physical death, they could become unstoppable. But she saw the future in his eyes. Not partnership, consumption. He would study her, exploit her, then attempt to bind her within the Force's current permanently. She smiled slowly. "No." The word fell like a blade. Palpatine sighed almost theatrically. "Very well." The Force gathered around him, vast, suffocating, ancient. Vader stepped forward simultaneously. No more testing, no more diplomacy. The Emperor and his apprentice aligned. Two currents of the dark side converging. Hela felt the pressure multiply instantly. Even at 94%, this was different. This was coordinated annihilation. The lava behind her began to rise unnaturally once more. The air vibrated with invisible tension. Storm clouds formed overhead despite Mustafar's hostile climate, drawn by the intensity of the Force. Hela extended both arms outward. Emerald energy surged skyward. The battlefield became a crucible.
and the true war for this galaxy's dead was about to begin.
The battlefield trembled under the weight of titanic wills colliding. Mustafar's sky churned violently. Blackened clouds streaked with green necrotic energy and red lightning from the converging force. Lava rivers boiled faster than any natural law should allow, and shockwaves tore across fractured obsidian plains, shaking debris high into the storm-choked air. The dead had been silenced, for now, but even their absence seemed to hum with tension, like witnesses waiting for the inevitable. Hela planted her boots firmly, feeling the molten ground beneath her as an anchor. She reached inward, drawing on the fragments of the nexus she had commandeered from Vader's fortress. Mustafar's lingering deaths, the slaughtered miners, the countless corpses of past conflicts, now intertwined with her own Asgardian essence, amplifying her power. She could sense every corner of the battlefield, every shudder of lava, every particle of ash caught in the gale. She had adapted quickly to the Force, but she knew the Sith were not to be underestimated. Palpatine and Vader advanced in unison. Palpatine's robes fluttered unnaturally, as if the air itself obeyed him, while his yellow eyes glimmered with patient malevolence. Vader's lightsaber hummed louder, a visceral vibration cutting through the cacophony of energy. Their coordination was terrifying. One manipulated the Force's currents to destabilize the terrain, while the other struck physically and telekinetically, ensuring Hela could not rely on a single method of attack. Hela moved with precision, each motion fluid and deliberate. She extended a hand, summoning jagged spears of green energy from the obsidian plains. They surged toward the Sith duo in synchronized volleys. Palpatine deflected them with a subtle wave, bending them mid-air like pliant rods of fire. Vader intercepted the rest, parrying with his lightsaber and sending arcs of red plasma hissing into the ground. Sparks erupted across the battlefield. The collision of necrotic and dark side energies created a resonance that made even the lava writhe. She smiled, a predator recognizing equal challenge. If the Force was a river, she would become a whirlpool. Hela pivoted and hurled another array of jagged blades, not at their defenses directly, but at the fissures in the volcanic terrain surrounding them. Explosions tore open new craters, sending rivers of molten lava surging unpredictably. Palpatine's eyes narrowed. She was altering the battlefield itself, using the environment to bypass raw Force power. Vader's mechanical breathing quickened ever so slightly. He had to account not just for her blades, but for the shifting ground beneath him. She leapt, suspended momentarily mid-air, and drew from the deepest part of her Asgardian strength. A surge of emerald necrotic energy blasted outward in a wave, colliding with Palpatine's Force storm. The energies met in a violent explosion, rippling across Mustafar like the birth of a supernova. Lava was flung high into the sky. Shockwaves sent ripples across the distant Star Destroyer's sensors. In orbit, Admiral Kendris's crew watched in silent terror, recognizing that this was no ordinary duel. It was a cosmic conflict writ small in their sector.
For the first time, Palpatine's lips twitched, not in amusement, but in the recognition that Hela was more than a passing anomaly. He had anticipated the Force resisting her, but not this level of integration, her ability to weave her power into the fabric of the terrain itself. Vader, too, sensed it. She had evolved in seconds, using the battlefield as both shield and weapon. This was not brute force. This was tactical genius. The Emperor's hands crackled with concentrated lightning. He released a barrage aimed directly at Hela, arcs of dark side energy carving through the volatile air. Hela absorbed a portion of it, twisting it into jagged green spears that she hurled back with lethal precision. The bolts struck the volcanic plains, sending shards of obsidian into the air like deadly hail. Vader leapt forward, swinging his lightsaber in a series of lethal arcs to intercept the returning spikes. but a few grazed his armor, leaving superficial scorches across durasteel plating. Even he could feel the disruption, the unfamiliar weight of alien energy. Hela landed amidst the chaos, her boots sparking against the molten black rock. She exhaled slowly, savoring the adrenaline, the rush of exertion and adaptation. Her crown gleamed violently, antlers casting fractured shadows across her scorched armor. She had escalated. She had survived the coordinated might of both Sith Lords and had begun to force them to adapt to her presence. The battlefield's rhythm now pulsed to her tempo. Palpatine's voice echoed through the tumultuous air, smooth and deliberate. "Fascinating. You adapt too quickly." "I do not adapt. I conquer." Vader took a measured step forward, lightsaber raised. "Your arrogance will be your undoing." "Perhaps," she said, "or perhaps it is the only way to survive this realm." The tension between them was now more than combat, it was strategy. Every movement, every release of energy, every adjustment to the battlefield counted. One misstep would mean death. Yet she remained calm, measured, calculating. From above, the Outer Rim fleets maintained distance, hesitant, aware of the unprecedented force emanating from Mustafar. The Empire itself watched through fragile, static-laden feeds, and at the heart of it all, Hela prepared for the next phase, a confrontation not merely of might, but of philosophy in dominion. Her next choice would define not just the outcome of this battle, but the balance of death and power in the Empire itself.
The ground beneath Mustafar trembled violently as the duel escalated. Lava rivers, once predictable in their flow, now writhed in chaotic patterns, bending to the confluence of Hela's necrotic power and the dark side energies of the Sith. The battlefield was no longer merely terrain, it was a living weapon, reshaping itself with each exchange of attacks. Hela crouched low atop a fractured basalt spire, observing her adversaries with careful calculation. Vader had begun to adjust, altering his stance to account for the unpredictable terrain. Palpatine, ever patient, radiated a barely perceptible pressure through the Force, probing her defenses in minute increments. She sensed both, yet she refused to yield. To do so would invite domination, and Hela answered to no one. "Your defiance is admirable, but futile," Palpatine murmured, eyes narrowing with interest. "The Force binds all things, even death." Hela's emerald eyes glimmered. "You mistake my presence for submission. I bend to nothing but my own will." A sudden pulse of energy erupted from her as she tapped deeper into the nexus she had established within Vader's fortress. Fragments of the dead, stormtroopers, miners, droids, rose in jagged forms, twisting bone, metal, and ash into constructs capable of offensive and defensive maneuvers. They surged forward in unison, their movements uncanny, unsettling the Sith. Vader spun his saber with practiced efficiency, cleaving through the undead constructs. Sparks flew, scattering fragments into molten rock. Each swing displayed the perfect balance of aggression and control, yet Hela's constructs adapted instantly, dissolving and reforming, forcing him to react continuously. Her mastery over death, even limited by the Force's interference, was remarkable. Palpatine raised a hand, drawing upon the distilled dark energies of Mustafar. Bolts of Sith lightning arced outward, meeting Hela's necrotic surge. A storm of green and red energy clashed, twisting the very air into turbulent maelstroms. The ash and molten rock became secondary projectiles, caught in the violent currents of magic and force. Despite the intensity, Hela moved with eerie grace.
She redirected a volley of lightning through her constructs, converting it into shards of energy that struck toward Vader. He deflected them with a mix of force-enhanced agility and brute strength, yet the impact forced him to stagger slightly, enough for Hela to launch herself into the air. From above, she landed atop a ridge closer to Vader and Palpatine, blades outstretched. "You fight with tradition," she said, voice carrying over the chaos. "I fight with inevitability."
Palpatine's lips twitched, a mixture of amusement and irritation. Bold words, bold but ultimately naive. The Force has its way, child of another world. Hela did not respond verbally. Instead, she extended her hand toward the ridge, raising obsidian spires from the molten rock. They twisted upward, forming a jagged cage meant to limit movement, a trap designed not to kill, but to demonstrate dominance. She could feel the Force straining against her constructs, resisting their intrusion, yet she persisted, pushing the limits of what her Asgardian energy could achieve in this foreign galaxy. Vader leapt onto the nearest spire, sabering through several of the obsidian columns in a single swing. His mechanical breathing intensified as he assessed the threat. Hela was not only powerful, she was adaptive, learning from each encounter in real time. Every attack refined her strategy, making her increasingly dangerous. His hand extended briefly, a subtle telekinetic push attempting to unbalance her footing. Hela countered effortlessly, pulling a fragment of the spire into herself and reforming it into a defensive barrier. "You rely too heavily on the predictable," she said softly, "and yet you underestimate the unknown." Palpatine's aura grew more oppressive. He began to weave his dark energies into more complex forms, attempting to envelop her constructs and limit their reach. His lightning, precise and deadly, struck in arcs, forcing Hela to constantly adjust, yet every strike she redirected, reshaped, and sent back with minor modifications. She had begun to integrate the ambient energies of Mustafa's nexus into her attacks, creating a hybrid assault of death and force manipulation. Vader observed, calculating. The girl, no, the goddess, was becoming a threat unlike any he had faced. Palpatine's approach was predictable, his reliance on the traditional methods of the dark side apparent. Yet Hela adapted fluidly, almost instinctively, bridging the gap between alien magic and the laws of the Force. This was no mere anomaly. This was a phenomenon capable of rewriting the galaxy's understanding of power. The lava surged again, splitting in multiple channels. Mustafa groaned under the strain, volcanic eruptions marking the climax of the ongoing battle. Hela leapt between spires, her antlered crown glinting ominously, blades whirling in green streaks. She was everywhere and nowhere at once, her presence dominating the battlefield with authority. Palpatine spoke, his voice calm despite the chaos. "You could serve me. Together we could perfect your dominion." Hela's eyes flicked toward him, unyielding. "I bow to no master, not in your galaxy, not anywhere." Vader tightened his grip on his saber. His voice resonated mechanically across the field. "Then you leave me no choice." The tension between them reached a breaking point. Every element of the battlefield, the shifting lava, the ash-filled sky, the residual necrotic constructs, was now intertwined with their wills. One misstep could trigger catastrophic devastation. Hela took a deep breath, feeling the nexus respond to her fully. 96%. She had nearly mastered this alien energy, bending it in concert with her own powers. She knew the next moments would define whether she survived the Empire's might, reshaped the battlefield permanently, or met an untimely death under the combined wrath of Sith mastery. And yet she smiled, because she had chosen the terms of her arrival, and she would choose the terms of her legacy.
The air vibrated as if the very molecules of Mustafar had been electrified by the raw collision of wills. Hela's emerald energy flared outward, striking the Emperor's lightning in violent resonance. The force pulsed like a living heartbeat, but she refused to bow. She had adapted, she had studied, and now she would escalate. Vader advanced with the lethal precision of a predator, every movement calculated, every strike designed to break defenses and exploit openings. Hela pivoted and conjured twin spears, hurling them at his midsection. He deflected one and caught the other mid-air with the force, redirecting it skyward into molten rivers. Yet even these minor diversions forced him to commit energy she could exploit. Palpatine's eyes narrowed. The emperors of old had faced powerful enemies before, but this was different. Hela was not simply resisting the force, she was bending it around herself, creating gaps, exploiting weaknesses, turning energy back on its source. He allowed a fraction of his lightning to touch her, watching as she absorbed and twisted it into jagged green shards, raining them back toward him. The battlefield became a chaotic dance. Lava erupted unpredictably. Jagged spires of obsidian tore through the scorched plains. Remnants of Hela's will materialized in sharp, lethal forms. Vader swung and lunged through the chaos, yet she anticipated him, redirecting constructs and twisting the ground beneath his feet, destabilizing his approach. Every step, every strike was countered with a fluidity that bordered on prescience. Palpatine raised both hands, summoning a vortex of force energy. Lightning lashed outward, striking Hela's constructs in the fractured terrain alike. The impact tore open fissures in Mustafar's crust, sending boiling lava surging in unnatural arcs. Yet Hela remained unshaken, drawing on the nexus within the fortress ruins. Necrotic energy streamed outward, enveloping her like a living aura. She reached past the limits of the planet itself, tethering fragments of past deaths to bolster her strength.
The Sith felt it immediately. Every bolt of lightning redirected, every strike of Vader deflected. The Nexus amplified her, created a harmonic resonance with her necrotic energy. And for the first time, both Emperor and Apprentice recognized the threat fully. She was no longer a mere intruder. She was an emergent force, unbound, unpredictable, and devastatingly effective. Vader lunged, igniting his saber with lethal intent, aiming directly for her crown. Hela sidestepped and struck with twin obsidian blades, slicing through the lava-soaked obsidian that he had used as a platform. Vader barely landed, boots skidding across molten rock. Sparks erupted from each collision. Palpatine's lightning intensified, now wrapping around the environment as well as Hela, seeking to limit her movement. She absorbed it, twisted it, and redirected fragments toward him. He smirked faintly, intrigued. Few had ever manipulated the Force against him so effectively, and fewer still had done so without faltering. The battle's intensity escalated further as Hela conjured phantasmal constructs from the depths of Mustafar itself. Fractured stone, molten metal, and the essence of the dead fused into spectral warriors. They advanced against the Sith, forcing them to divide attention between raw power and battlefield management. Vader cut through many, yet even he noticed a calculated pattern. They were not mindless. Each strike and block choreographed to exhaust him strategically. Hela moved to a ridge overlooking the volcanic plain. Her crown extended fully, antlers jagged and radiant, casting long, fractured shadows. She raised both hands,
channeling energy from every corner of the battlefield, the debris and the lingering deaths. The storm coalesced above her like a crown of chaos. Her green energy pulsed in synchronized resonance with the terrain, the battlefield itself bending subtly to her will. "You cannot contain me," she said, voice ringing with authority. "Not with force, not with lightning, not with fear." Palpatine narrowed his eyes. "Impressive, child, but do you understand the consequences of challenging the dark side itself?" "I understand," she replied, the air vibrating around her, "and I will face them."
Vader's mechanical breathing quickened as he sensed the rising intensity. Every ounce of his training, every lesson from his master demanded precision, but Hela was pushing him and the Emperor to their limits. Suddenly, Hela extended her necrotic energy outward in a massive wave. Lava rivers froze mid-flow, ash swirled violently, and fragments of destroyed constructs levitated as if caught in time. The combined dark side power of the Emperor and Vader struck back with a coordinated torrent, attempting to crush her, but she twisted, redirected, and merged it with her own energy in a hybridized torrent of destruction. The sky erupted in violent streaks of red and green. Mustafar groaned under the strain. The battlefield had become a living crucible, a test of raw power, ingenuity, and sheer will. Neither side yielded, neither could falter. Hela's eyes glowed brightly. For the first time, the battlefield itself seemed to pulse with her presence. She was not merely fighting, she was asserting dominion, shaping the environment, challenging the natural order of this galaxy's force. Palpatine's voice cut through the storm. "You will not survive this, yet you intrigue me." "I do not wish to survive. I intend to endure, and I intend to rule." Vader advanced once more, this time coordinating with Palpatine's lightning in perfect synergy. Yet Hela anticipated, adapted, and responded. Her power now nearly at full capacity, 97%. Every strike she parried, every attack she redirected forced the Emperor and his apprentice to expend energy, to adjust in real time. The battlefield had become a test of endurance, strategy, and adaptation. Hela's methods, necrotic mastery intertwined with alien resilience, were unparalleled in this galaxy. She was no longer just a visitor, she was a force that demanded recognition. And as lava, lightning, and necrotic energy collided violently, one question lingered in the minds of all present. Could even two of the galaxy's most formidable dark side users finally overcome the goddess of death herself? The battlefield had shifted into something unrecognizable. Lava rivers now flowed in twisted, serpentine arcs, guided by Hela's necrotic influence, while obsidian spires protruded unpredictably, forming a jagged maze across the volcanic plain. The air was thick with ash and ozone, the scent of scorched rock mingled with the metallic tang of death. Shadows and light clashed violently as green energy met red lightning in blinding eruptions, sending tremors rippling to orbiting star destroyers. Even the Emperor's sensors faltered under the chaotic maelstrom. Hela stood at the apex of a fractured spire, her crown fully extended, antlers radiating lethal green light. Beneath her, fragments of necrotic constructs skittered across molten rock, acting as extensions of her will. Every movement was precise, a deadly dance informed by strategy and instinct, forcing both Vader and Palpatine to adapt continuously. Their combined mastery of the Force had never been tested in such a dynamic environment. Palpatine's voice cut through the storm, calm yet commanding. "I admire your resolve, but the galaxy bends to the dark side. Every act of defiance is merely a ripple in a tide you cannot control."
Hela tilted her head, emerald eyes narrowing. You underestimate the abyss. I am the abyss, and you cannot contain it. With a sudden motion, she thrust her hand toward the largest lava river. The molten current froze mid-flow, shards of hardened magma twisting into sharp, jagged formations that shot toward Vader and Palpatine like deadly spears. Vader telekinetically intercepted most, deflecting them with precision, while Palpatine countered the rest with focused lightning. Yet the effort forced both to expend considerable energy. The Emperors of the dark side recognized something profound. Hela was not merely powerful, she was an anomaly in the Force. She resisted, redirected, and transformed it into a weapon uniquely her own. Her understanding of death and decay allowed her to exploit the battlefield itself, integrating the environment into her attacks. She had transcended conventional limitations. Hela leapt from the spire, descending toward the Sith with twin obsidian blades spinning in her hands. Lightning arced from Palpatine, seeking to immobilize her mid-air. She absorbed a fraction of it, weaving it into her necrotic matrix, forming jagged green projectiles that she hurled at Vader. The crimson saber deflected them, but the molten debris forced him to shift constantly, destabilizing his rhythm. Palpatine extended both hands, manipulating the Force with surgical precision. He lifted sections of obsidian spires and molten rock, hurling them in synchronized volleys. Hela twisted mid-air, dissipating the attacks into green mist before they could strike her, then used the energy to form a shield that repelled a simultaneous flanking assault by Vader. Every move she made was a calculated counter, exploiting the smallest gaps in the Sith's coordination.
The nexus of power she had drawn from the fortress beneath Mustafar pulsed in resonance with her own energy. Fragments of past deaths, warriors, miners, stormtroopers, rose and fell as extensions of her will. Each construct was precise, designed to distract, delay, or injure, while she prepared the battlefield for her next decisive move. She had achieved near-perfect synergy with her alien power and the residual Force energy, reaching 98% of her potential in this environment. Vader advanced directly, saber slashing with lethal intent. Hela sidestepped, slashing backward and cutting through the spire, supporting his weight. He barely regained balance, forced to leap across molten fissures. Palpatine's lightning intensified, arcs lancing across the obsidian pillars, attempting to pin her, but she countered with precise eruptions and necrotic energy that not only neutralized the attacks, but redirected them in jagged bursts toward her enemies. The Emperor's yellow eyes narrowed. "You are exceptional," he admitted, almost begrudgingly. "Few have ever combined raw power with tactical genius in this manner." "I do not seek praise," Hela replied, voice steady. "I seek dominion." Vader lunged with a spinning attack designed to overwhelm her defenses. Hela blocked with one obsidian blade, the other slicing toward his side. Sparks erupted as red met green, heat flaring from the clash. Her hybrid energy disrupted his telekinetic push, forcing him to stagger backward. Palpatine's hands rose, summoning a focused torrent of lightning, attempting to strike her mid-movement. Hela caught a fraction, forming a lethal shard of energy and hurling it toward the Emperor, forcing him to deflect instantly. Hela's strategy became clear. She did not merely survive, she dictated the pace, forcing the Sith to react continuously, while she controlled terrain, constructs, and energy flows. Every strike, every manipulation of death and decay served to incrementally erode their advantage. She had transformed the battlefield into her domain, leveraging both her alien magic and the Force-infused environment to achieve supremacy. The Emperor's eyes glimmered with new respect and calculation. Vader's mechanical breathing grew heavier with exertion. Yet Hela remained poised, energy humming around her, antlers casting fractured, lethal shadows. The final confrontation loomed, where strategy, raw power, and will would converge. She knew one thing: the galaxy's dead had chosen their commander, and she intended to claim her throne.
The volcanic winds of Mustafar screamed like tortured souls as Hela prepared for her next decisive move. Every footfall on the fractured obsidian sent ripples of molten energy racing outward. The battlefield had become a living extension of her will, lava rivers curling unnaturally, jagged spires shifting subtly, ash swirling in controlled currents around her. The Emperor and Vader advanced in unison, each step deliberate, each strike calculated, but now they moved into territory defined entirely by Hela's dominance. Palpatine's yellow eyes glimmered with deadly curiosity. "You have adapted to our tactics admirably. Few could contend with the dark side in such a manner." His hands crackled with controlled lightning, arcs twisting and striking the jagged terrain rather than her directly, testing her limits. Yet the dark side does not falter. It bends all who oppose it. Hela tilted her head, emerald eyes cold. It bends to fools who mistake power for understanding. Vader lunged, spinning through molten debris with mechanical precision, lightsaber aimed to incapacitate. Hela sidestepped gracefully, twisting midair to summon jagged spears of green necrotic energy. They erupted from the obsidian ground with explosive force, striking at Vader's flanks. He blocked with his saber, yet each strike forced him to expend energy, diverting him from offensive maneuvers. The Emperor's lightning intensified, now striking multiple points in the environment simultaneously, creating a violent storm of red energy that licked across the battlefield. Hela absorbed fragments of it into her necrotic constructs, which twisted and morphed, retaliating with deadly precision. Lava rivers split and reformed beneath her feet, sending columns of molten rock toward Vader. He telekinetically deflected some, yet Hela anticipated the minor gaps he left exposed. She leapt, spinning her twin blades in a deadly arc that clipped his armor, sending him staggering backward. The battlefield itself seemed to respond to her will. Volcanic fissures opened as necrotic energy pulsed outward, creating new terrain and obstacles. Even Palpatine recognized the ingenuity, tilting his head in interest. "You transform the battlefield into an instrument of your power. Remarkable." Hela's lips curved into a faint, deadly smile. "I do not merely fight, I orchestrate." Vader recovered, igniting a second swing aimed at her crown. Hela ducked and countered with a surge of necrotic energy that lifted molten fragments into the air, forming a swirling storm. The two forces collided mid-air, the necrotic energy meeting the concentrated dark side lightning. A violent shockwave tore through the volcanic plain, sending fragments of obsidian rock and molten debris flying into orbit. For a moment, the battlefield fell into eerie silence. Hela's constructs hovered, green energy glowing, while the Emperor's lightning sputtered, contained by her own power. Vader stood poised, assessing, mechanical breathing heavy. Hela exhaled slowly, feeling the nexus within Mustafar synchronize fully with her energy. 99%. She was at the peak of her capacity, almost fully integrated with the Force despite her alien nature.
Palpatine's voice, calm and deliberate, cut through the tension. "Impressive. You may have survived my apprentices and my tests, yet you still underestimate the dark side's reach." "I underestimate nothing," Hela replied, eyes blazing. "I embrace inevitability." Vader lunged again, saber swinging in a relentless assault. Hela deflected with precision, then expanded her necrotic energy outward in a massive arc, knocking both Sith back. The green wave collided with Palpatine's redirected lightning in a dazzling explosion, the shockwave sending molten rock flying across miles of terrain. Hela's voice rang clear over the chaos. "You are strong, but strength without understanding is weakness, and I do not bow to weakness." Palpatine's eyes narrowed, yet there was a flicker of admiration. Vader, sensing the growing intensity, braced for the next strike. Hela had transformed the confrontation into something more than a duel. It was an assertion of dominion. Every strike, every redirection, every manipulation of death and terrain asserted her claim. The storm overhead darkened, swirling with green and red energy, casting fractured shadows across the molten plains. This was the crucible of power, the moment when only one would dictate the terms of dominion, when the galaxy's dead would finally choose their master. And Hela would not be denied.
The battlefield had become unrecognizable, a chaotic crucible of molten lava, jagged obsidian spires, ash-filled skies, and swirling storms of green and red energy. Hela stood at the center, her antlered crown radiating with lethal brilliance, necrotic constructs hovering around her like loyal generals. The Emperor and Vader advanced cautiously, every movement precise, but the weight of her dominion pressed upon them. Mustafar itself seemed to bend subtly to her will, a testament to her mastery over death, an environment combined with her adaptation to the Force. Palpatine's voice was calm, yet it carried the authority of centuries of manipulation. "You have endured the assaults of my apprentices, deflected my lightning, and integrated the Force in ways few can comprehend. But know this, you cannot dismantle the dark side itself. It is absolute, inevitable, and eternal." Hela tilted her head, emerald eyes unflinching. "I do not dismantle it, I reshape it." Vader lunged, sabers spinning in a deadly coordinated attack. Hela parried with twin blades of green energy, twisting her necrotic constructs to intercept his swings. Each collision sent molten debris and jagged fragments scattering across the battlefield. She struck back, her attacks precise and lethal, cutting through lava-formed barricades and forcing Vader to react continuously. The Emperor extended both hands, directing torrents of lightning toward Hela. She absorbed fragments into her energy matrix, reconfiguring them into jagged projectiles that she hurled back. The storm intensified, green necrotic energy and red Sith lightning intertwined, crackling across the battlefield in arcs of destructive beauty. Lava rivers twisted unnaturally, forming barriers and channels under her control. Hela's constructs surged forward, engaging the Sith directly. Some distracted, some struck, but all acted with intent, shaped by her will. Vader deflected attacks with force pushes and saber strikes, while Palpatine manipulated the environment with surgical precision. Yet the sheer complexity of Hela's control forced them into constant adaptation. She exhaled, centering herself. Her crown's antlers glowed brighter, the nexus fully resonating with her presence. 99% of her potential had been realized. She drew upon the deaths that surrounded Mustafar, the fallen Sith, Imperial troops, miners, even remnants of the Jedi who had perished during past wars. Their energies intertwined with her own, creating a hybrid power impossible for ordinary beings to comprehend. "You bend life and death with frightening clarity," Palpatine admitted. "Few have ever done so." "I do not bend," Hela said softly. "I command, and those who oppose me fall." Vader advanced for a decisive strike, aiming directly at her heart. Hela raised both hands, unleashing a massive wave of necrotic energy. The ground itself erupted, lava surging violently, constructs expanding into spectral warriors, all converging in a single, unstoppable push. Palpatine attempted to counter with lightning, Vader with brute force, yet they were caught in the full weight of her assault. The explosion of energy tore across Mustafar, shattering spires, sending molten rocks skyward, and forcing both Sith to retreat just enough to maintain balance. The sheer ferocity and originality of her attack had demonstrated her absolute mastery of the battlefield. Hela stood unbroken, breathing steadily, her presence radiating authority over death itself. Palpatine's yellow eyes glimmered with something resembling respect, calculated, careful. Vader's mechanical breathing had slowed, his posture defensive. For the first time, Hela sensed hesitation, the first crack in the armor of the galaxy's dark side masters. She did not smile, did not gloat. She simply extended her hand toward the horizon. The necrotic energy flared, a clear declaration. Mustafar was no longer just a battlefield. It was her throne, her dominion. The galaxy's dead had chosen their queen, and she would not be denied. Hela's gaze swept across the Emperor and his apprentice. One final choice remained: submit, align temporarily, or face complete annihilation. Her dominance was clear, her command over life and death absolute. The galaxy would never see power like this again. The storm raged, the battlefield quieting only in acknowledgement of her supremacy. She was not merely a visitor in this galaxy. She was an apex, an eternal force reshaping the course of death, strategy, and dominion itself.
The volcanic plains of Mustafar had quieted, though the scars of battle were etched deeply across the planet's surface. Lava rivers cooled into jagged obsidian, spires shattered and twisted, and ash settled in the valleys, settling like a shroud over a battlefield that had witnessed the unimaginable. Hela stood at the center, her antlered crown gleaming with lethal authority, necrotic energy lingering like a halo. The Emperor and Vader had survived, yes, but they had been forced to acknowledge her unparalleled dominion over life, death, and the battlefield itself. Hela's integration with the Force was no longer tenuous. She had adapted, learned, and reshaped its currents to her advantage. The necrotic energy she commanded had fused seamlessly with the ambient force of Mustafar, creating a hybrid power unlike anything this galaxy had ever seen. She was not constrained by the limitations of Jedi, Sith, or even the traditional laws of the Force. Her choices were her own, moral ambiguity fully intact, her strategy informed by centuries of experience and a ruthless understanding of dominion. The galaxy itself had been forced to take notice. Imperial forces in orbit hesitated, sensing a power beyond the comprehension of even the most disciplined dark side users. Palpatine and Vader, while not destroyed, had been forced into reactive positions, a subtle yet profound acknowledgement of Hela's supremacy. She had demonstrated that raw power alone was insufficient. Understanding, adaptability, and the audacious command of death could redefine the rules. In the aftermath, Hela's new status in the galaxy was undeniable. She was neither an ally nor an enemy of the Sith in the traditional sense. She existed as a sovereign force, a reckoning embodied. Those who had fallen, whose deaths she had woven into her dominion, were her silent witnesses and instruments. She had proven that even in a galaxy ruled by the dark side, a force from beyond could rise, unbound and absolute. And as Hela turned toward the horizon, green energy trailing like the tail of a comet, the implications were clear. The galaxy had changed. No power structure, Imperial, Sith, or otherwise, could ever view death or dominance the same way again. A new apex had emerged, one whose presence would ripple through the stars and whose legacy would redefine the struggle for power, fear, and authority. The dark side had been tested, and in this moment, the goddess of death had rewritten the rules of survival and supremacy. Hela's reign, unchallenged yet still vigilant, marked a turning point. She was no longer simply a visitor from another realm. She was a master of this galaxy, a being whose command over death and the Force made even legends pause and reconsider.
The stage was set for new conflicts, new alliances, and new challenges, but one truth remained immutable. Hela would not be denied, and the galaxy would remember her dominion. More stories awaits.